the rest of the story. It all started in Bridgeport, Connecticut, more than a century ago. There was a pie company in town, big bakery. All they baked was pies. The company drivers used horse-drawn wagons to deliver their product back then. One day, during the driver's lunch break, they were all standing around in back of the shop, a bit bored maybe. One of the drivers got an idea. He reached in the back of his pie wagon and pulled out one of the company's wares from a stack and heaved it directly at one of the other drivers. It was a direct hit. Well, the rest of the employees thought this was terribly funny, and before anyone knew what was happening, all of the drivers were hurling the company's products at one another. And as far as I know, nothing like this had ever happened anywhere before. The pie company drivers found that this particular activity was an ideal way to relieve boredom, and beginning on that day, it became a regular noontime recreation. Now, before you start thinking of this as the great Bridgeport pie fight, I should explain that the company employees, over many months of practice, developed it into a real art. They discovered, for example, that the accuracy of the throw depended on a special way of holding the pie tin and a certain forward wrist action just before the release. You might have guessed that one day the pie company president just happened to be passing by about noon. He saw his workers engaged in this peculiar pastime. He became rather annoyed. After all, this was company property the drivers were tossing about so recklessly. But you know, the sheer exhilaration derived from this odd recreation was irrepressible in itself. And pretty soon Yale University students picked up on it. Throwing became a craze. And then Harvard, never far behind Yale in college fads, began throwing on campus. Some irreverent students even called it a sport. Might interest you to know that all of the while that Bridgeport Pie Company products were the only ones used in honor of the company drivers who had invented the pastime, Purdue followed Harvard in the craze, then Notre Dame followed Purdue. In a short while, every major college in the country was into the act. And it all started in Bridgeport, Connecticut, more than a century ago, with the employees of a local pie company. They began throwing the company's products at each other during lunch break as a way of letting off steam. In fact, the activity is successful even today. For that same pie company in Bridgeport, Connecticut, sold 80,000 pies daily as recently as 1956. And though the company itself no longer exists, the pastime innovated by their drivers in the early 1870s is prevalent to this day. For the pie company wares tossed about by the drivers were not the pies themselves, but the pie tins. And today, one of those original pie tins is on display in the Smithsonian Institution because of its aeronautical significance. And the name of the Bridgeport, Connecticut Pie Company is embossed on that pie tin. The name, the Frisbee Pie Company. The containers of which became, that's right, the Frisbee. Only now you know the origin, for now you know the rest of the story.